Have you spotted me yet? So unbelievably camouflaged. The wildlife photography question. Do you need hides and other accessories, or don't you? Some photographers say you do, some say you don't. But I guess I'm going to find out. It's really quite warm in here. I have a theory really that it depends on a couple of different factors as to whether you need something like this. One being your subject, two, the location. So deer locally are pretty skittish. They are not used to being near humans. They are very difficult to get close to. And this location in particular is pretty wide open. There aren't many places to remain hidden. And that is the thing with deer photography, is that you don't want them to know that you are there, because otherwise they will run, and that is it, chance over. So ideally this should help me today. However, it is pretty big and I don't know if I can coordinate this. So the deer have gone into the trees, and usually sort of mid to late afternoon they come back out of the trees just on the other side. So I've positioned myself there, and fingers crossed they do come back out. However, it's becoming pretty windy, and the wind typically is against me today. It is blowing straight behind me and over to the deer in those trees, and I can actually hear them in there as well.
To my delight, the deer eventually wandered out into the open, slowly grazing as they came closer and closer, giving me hope that they would come in range for a few good images. But suddenly they all snapped to attention, staring down the trail behind me. Moments later, two local walkers appeared off camera, and the deer trotted off, clearly viewing them as potential threats.
Yeah, they are gone. Gone, gone, gone. It's going to be a while before they head back this way again. Well, do you know what? This works. Because the deer had no idea that I was here, hiding behind this. The moment those two gentlemen walked past, and to be fair, they tried to give me a wide berth. They went behind me to try not to disrupt sort of what I was doing. But the deer, despite being so far away, spotted them a mile away and just bolted. And that's it. It's game over. This is not easy. Let me show you what I'm working with here. So this is how open it is, and this is the boundary to the pathway. You can't go beyond this point. And the deer were all the way over there. I do wonder, had those guys not come past, if the deer would have come a little closer, because it looked like they were inching towards me slowly, and I have seen them come as far as this point before. But I guess I'll never know. This is not easy. This is not easy at all.
Difficult indeed.
Very, very quickly, I'm just going to go through the kit that I'm using in this video. So this is my OM1 Mark II, and OM System have very kindly allowed me to borrow one of their 300mm F4 prime telephoto lenses. Disclaimer, this is not a review, but I will probably share my thoughts at the end of the video. So this is a lens that I actually almost bought, and I'm really curious about it, which is why I'm testing it out. I actually bought a 100 to 400mm telephoto lens, one that I tried earlier on in the year and absolutely loved. So I guess I'm just curious and want to know, did I make the right purchase?
The camera kit isn't the only important tool though. Camouflage, the right wind direction, and patience are key tools as well for success.
I'm slowly building a camo outfit and figuring out what works for me, but I'd say that I lack the last one, patience, and that is probably the most important thing. I usually struggle to sit and hide for more than about an hour and a half before I have to move. I prefer to walk around and explore rather than just sit and wait.
But sit and wait I did. I set up in a similar spot, and at first the park was completely silent. After a while, the herd suddenly came sprinting across the hill, leaving me completely baffled. Why on earth were they charging out of the middle of the park and disappearing into the trees by the main trail? The next thing I knew, they were running again, this time in my direction. My single camera angle here does not come close to capturing the sheer chaos of a couple of hundred deer thundering my way, and they were getting pretty close. Fortunately, they mostly veered along the tree line, and I just held the shutter button, did my best to capture the frenzy while feeling like a sitting duck in a flimsy bit of fabric. Then came the moment I thought they'd finally spotted me. But no, they were looking past me at something else entirely. Whatever it was sent them scattering again, in various directions, leaving me completely bewildered.
I still don't quite understand what happened. I think I heard some kind of van or car, so I have a feeling that the park rangers or the park owners may have been doing a site check, which is why they ended up in the trees earlier on to begin with, and why they were spooked out of the trees and towards me. There is actually a building on the other side of the trees that the public can't access. But that was absolute insanity. I'd say about 90% of the deer didn't know that I was there, so the camera works. 10% did, because I did take myself out of the hide briefly, because all I could hear was a herd of deer, which is a scary sound, coming towards me from behind, up the sides, and I needed to peek out and see what was happening and whether I was safe and needed to move. And actually I was fine. They were hugging the tree line. I don't know what I could hear behind me. The sound may have just been sort of carrying through the wind. But yes, that was probably the closest I'm ever going to get to the deer. And if I ever do get that close to them in the future, just a couple, a handful at most, not the entire herd, because it really was quite terrifying.
And so I visited Richmond Park in London for the chance to see deer up close without the fear of being trampled on.
Turns out you can get extremely close to the deer here, almost too close. 600 mil is a bit of an overkill.
It was much easier to find them because they're so accustomed to people. They don't disappear the moment you are seen. But even so, the experience fell short of what I had imagined.
My experience already at Richmond Park has been very interesting. I expected to be absolutely wowed by the intimacy of photographing deer and the sort of emotional and creative connection that you can build by getting that bit closer. But instead I've sort of been taken out of the magic very slightly.
It wasn't just the crowds on a busy day ignoring the 50-metre rule, or the dog owners letting their pets roam off lead. It was the constant reminder of the city pressing in. The deer may roam freely, and the park is undeniably beautiful, but I just couldn't shake the feeling of being in a zoo or a safari. The whole encounter felt curated rather than wild, the city humming just beyond the trees, and it brought a question I'd been circling into sharp focus. What exactly am I seeking in my deer photography? What am I trying to achieve? Why do I keep going back to my local park searching for something unknown? The answer, I realised, is the rawness of nature, the experiences earned through a slower, quieter and unpredictable process, that sense of discovery. Perhaps not being able to get close to the deer locally is not a limitation, and while I'm still building those skills and the experience and the knowledge to perhaps be able to get a bit closer, this is a chance to turn it into a creative advantage, do something a little different, to step back and try and capture those more subtle and raw moments between nature and the environment. The subtle life of deer, or something like that. I'm sure I'll come up with a better name. Instead of proximity, it's about their daily rhythms. And sounds a bit more open and less pressured. Get into this casually, she said, as she comes up with a project name, a long-term project name, and starts building a camouflage kit. I can't do things half-heartedly. We're either in or we're not doing it at all. You may have noticed. Anyway, it's absolutely freezing. I've been out here for a few hours this morning, not really seen anything, to be honest, apart from a few morning walkers. And so yes, I am going to go back into the warmth and share my final thoughts with you. So I do need to give this lens back to OM system now, which is a shame for me because it was such a pleasure to use. And it's one of those bits of kit that it just falls into your camera bag so easily and effortlessly. It's just comfortable to use. And had I bought this instead of the 100 to 400, I'd have been just as happy, to be honest. But between two lenses like this, I think it really depends on what you need your kit to do as to which one you would choose. There's something so wonderfully simple about a fixed focal length and a constant aperture. It just made the process so much smoother. I didn't waste any time in fiddling with certain settings or changing my focal length. However, there's always a trade-off. There were certainly times where I wanted to go a little wide and perhaps get an environmental shot, and I couldn't do so without physically moving and maybe being seen, being noticed by my subject. Or times where I wanted to zoom in a little more, and so that's where something like the 100 to 400 then has its perks. But I would love to know, would you prioritize the consistency of a constant aperture prime lens, or would you go with the flexibility of a zoom telephoto? In terms of the throw over height, it works beautifully, and so this will stay a part of my camera kit. However, I have terrible coordination, and I am getting better at coordinating it, but there is a lot of fabric to deal with. And I think if you get to location and your subject is not there and you're willing to sit and wait, you've got time to get yourself in it perfectly fine. If you get there and your subject is already there and you're trying to remain inconspicuous, it's not as easy to get yourself in it properly without being seen, being noticed. So it's a work in progress. Right, that is enough of my attempt at deer photography today. I'm sure I'll be back doing it soon, but also it's my cue to go and do some waterfall photography because we just had a lot of rain. But don't quote me on that, because at any time I say that I'm going to do something on camera, it never usually works out for some reason, so we'll see, fingers crossed. It's been a while since I did some waterfall photography, so that would be very, very nice. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time.